So, you dislike SAO, do ya? Surely you're familiar with one of the most constant and convincing critiques of that series. Heck, even many fans of the show will admit that Reki Kawahara's continual and gratuitous use of rape is an issue. And the main issue with it is that Kawahara seems entirely unable to come up with ways to get you to hate a primary antagonist except by making them a rapist. It's the quickest way to create a villain out of a character. And hey, that may result in a lazy, dull, unnuanced, and cliched villain, but it'll get you one nonetheless. If you agree with that critique of SAO, and you should because it's a correct one, and you still think Goblin Slayer is good, you're a hypocrite, because that is the literal premise of this series. Let's explain. Goblin Slayer is a series about following around our super cool hero as he goes about his quest of wiping out the goblins. The action sequences, from what I've seen of them, are pretty solid technically. There's enough tactical depth to how Mr. Slayer goes about his killing to make that side of things engaging. However, none of this changes the fact that the conceit of this show is a dude killing bad guys that are bad in large part because they rape a lot. My complaint here isn't even that the rape is gratuitous or problematic or anything like that, so you can go shove your "but the rape isn't that bad in the light novel, only the manga does that" up your goblin dick sleeve. My complaint is that it ruins the writing of the series on a fundamental level. Again, this is literally how SAO structures things. Watch how cool Kirito is for beating up a rape guy. But oh-ho, you may be saying. What about the intriguing moral quandary at play? The series certainly explores the moral implications of a race that is inherently evil, ending its first episode with our prospective character wincing over Mr. Slayer murdering goblin babies. But that whole philosophical question is fucking stupid. The series makes this out as if it's supposed to even approach being an interesting concept, a study in when killing is justified, of a utilitarian greater good scenario. It's in the vein of the trolley problem. Except unlike that example, there's no nuance here, no debate to even be had. Goblins are evil inherently. Not only do they require rape to reproduce, as their species is only male, but beyond just that need, which would at least theoretically leave wiggle room for some good goblins to reject breeding because of that necessitated rape, they also have a predisposition to hate, quote, "those with words." Well, I guess that's it then. They inherently, by their biology, need to rape, and by their nature will be hostile towards humanity. If the author had been able to restrain his dick stroking over creating a race that it's actually okay to be racist towards just a little bit, he could have made a functional philosophical question. If the goblins could choose not to rape, that actually leaves the question of good goblins up in the air. That murder of goblin children becomes just a tad bit morally gray if there's the possibility that they could have grown up to be good people. With literally 5 seconds of thought into how to improve things, I can conceive this change that would vastly increase the amount of depth the series possesses. However, as things are, there isn't even a goddamn question to be asked. This situation isn't interesting at all. Of course you kill them off. They are inherently evil beings. What debate could possibly be had over this situation? Are you a fucking pro-lifer? All goblin life is sacred. Otherwise, I don't see what points could possibly be argued here. And let's now get to those racial elements, shall we? It's somewhat telling that the characterization the series ended up using to create villains of the goblins is basically a hodgepodge of all sorts of racist propaganda from throughout the centuries. There's of course the obvious, "those foreigners are coming to rape your white daughters," but it goes deeper than that. As a race, goblins are weak creatures, but they are tricky and conniving and just breed so dang quickly. That's how they manage to remain a threat. This is exactly how white supremacists explain the other races causing issues for white people when they are supposedly the superior race. Goblins themselves have a long history as a Jewish caricature, being hook-nosed creatures who hole up in their caves hoarding wealth. And there's the point in episode 1 where Mr. Slayer literally says, "The only good goblin is one that never crawls out of its hole." That whole phrase structure happens to come from "the only good Indian is a dead Indian," which, as far as we know, was its initial use. Now, calm the fuck down this instant and listen carefully. Am I saying that the author is racist? No. Am I saying the series is racist? No. Although the fact that Goblin Slayer isn't racist doesn't seem to stop some idiot LARPers from using it to play out their fantasies of racial genocide. If I see you whining in the comments about the SJW upset over non-existent racism, I will personally come to your house and chop your dick off. I'm not saying it's racist, I'm saying that it's fucking lazy. If your characterization of your villains is literally as flat and unnuanced as fucking racist propaganda, then I'm sorry to say that you have written a piece of shit story. And at the end here, let me say that edgy is a stupid criticism, a really stupid one. Why then did I call you an edgelord if you like this series? Because I guarantee that huge portions of Goblin Slayers' fans have said Tokyo Ghoul is trash because it's so edgy, or laughed at Magical Girl Sight a few seasons back for being so edgy, or have made fun of Linkin Park Naruto AMVs for being so edgy. If you ever use edgy as a criticism, if you, unlike me, buy into that as a critique that holds any validity whatsoever, and yet don't apply that label of edgy to this series, then you're even more proof of why edgy is such a vapid, meaningless term to describe something. This is a series whose premise is a dude who watched his family get raped and murdered, going around to wipe out a race of inherently evil, savage rapists. The concept of a species that has to rape other intelligent life in order to survive is the most Shadow the Hedgehog bullshit of all time, except unlike Shadow the Hedgehog, it isn't the coolest video game of all time. If anything would qualify as edge, this series would be it. So ask yourself why you don't consider it to be edgy if in fact you don't. I've seen some people try to explain or excuse this by saying, well, it's a dark, gritty fantasy. But last I checked, dumb bullshit wasn't a necessary genre element of that. I'm sorry, but if the only way you can think of for something to be dark is overblown and unrealistic rape, then you are sorely lacking in creativity. Dark is contemplating hurting yourself because you feel worthless and feel like doing that might make you less so. Goblin Slayer isn't dark, it's child's play. The conception of what darkness is by a 13-year-old who's been lucky enough to never encounter real darkness in their own life. Something so overblown that it could only speak to reality in the most vague of ways isn't dark. This series doesn't touch upon any heavy truth, any frightening reality of human nature or existence. You want dark? Go watch Rakugo Shinju. Go watch, spoilers, a man carry the guilt of killing his best friend for fucking decades of torturous life afterwards. And as I already covered, in addition to the rape not being dark, neither is the whole moral question over killing goblin babies. So there is nothing here. I get it. I would have once called this series dark myself. I do understand how you could think that. I was just a massive idiot back when I would have called it that, and by now I've become a tad bit less idiotic. As always, still feel free to watch the series if you enjoy it for whatever reason, whether that be because of a so bad it's good appeal, or because even after all this you still enjoy it as a good series. I've offered up my reasons for why Goblin Slayer is bad, but hey, maybe you don't agree that SAO handles its villains poorly. More power to ya. Whatever the case may be, I hope that you can at least appreciate the perspective I put forth here, and I'll appreciate your individual feelings on the show in turn. Thanks for stopping by, please like, comment, and subscribe, because YouTube has buried my channel so hard that now I've stooped to unironically asking for that stuff. I love my employer. I decided to make this video because my dismissal of Goblin Slayer in my seasonal overview video got some pushback, and so I thought it would be good to lay out my feelings on the matter in an organized fashion. The Shadow the Hedgehog theme is unironically cool as shit, don't at me. Do you remember me? Capture you and set you free. I am all that I am, all I am. Do you remember you? Massive thanks as always go out to Psyker, MathWiz97, Jonathan Conley, Skylar Morrow, Tyler Monk, Sakamoto Mio, Tincho37, Josh Grant, Lord Liquid Bacon III, Elaine Aldfelt, David McCown, His Short Dog, Smokeweed Sephiroth 420, J-Man4747, Jedi168, Peach Plum, and everyone else supporting me on Patreon already for enabling me to do karaoke of Sonic music. Surprise! That's what your pledges were for all along.